The Ruwenzori Mountains, snow-capped peaks in the heart of Africa. The land of Matauvu Mojindo and his people, the Bakonzo, with their colorful past and uncertain future. Matauvu must give up hunting. The government forces him to. What will become of him and the Ruwenzori, which the ancient Greeks called the Mountains of the Moon? And what will the rain gods say when they can't offer them any sacrifices anymore? A small village in Uganda, in the shadow of the Ruwenzori Mountains. The people are gathering to celebrate one of their heroes. The play is about hunting for monkeys and bushbuck, and the dangers of the woods. The hero of the story is called Matauvu. The great hunter himself is among the audience today, the leader of 80 hunters. Matauvu, who fought against the rebels and for the independence of the Bakonzo. Matauvu, who repeatedly escaped the park rangers who had orders to shoot poachers. But all that is history. Today, Matauvu and his people will say farewell to a centuries-old tradition, farewell to the hunt. We are forced to stop hunting because of the national park. Now there are rangers everywhere. There's no way out. Moses, Matauvu's eldest son, won't follow in the footsteps of his father. The meat of the game is irreplaceable. It's our medicine. But the government doesn't allow us to hunt because the wild animals are important to them. They want the tourists to take photos and pay for them. I don't think the government will allow us to ever hunt again. Now that he is no longer allowed to hunt, Matauvu has more time for his farm. On the slopes of the Ruwenzori Mountains, at nearly 2,000 meters, the coffee beans ripen, the only source of income for Matauvu and his wife Flora. They use the proceeds from the farm to pay for the school fees or for medicine when a child. Luckily, the coffee price has risen recently, so the small plantation provides them with a modest income. But without the hunt, it's difficult to make a living. For generations, Matauvu's family has used what the fertile soil has given them. The women look after the farms and the men go into the mountains to hunt. Now, Matauvu and the other hunters need to find new jobs. "500 meters below Matauvu's village lies the mining settlement of Kilembe. John Hunwick lives here. He was one of those who convinced Matauvu to stop hunting. Hunwick is an explosives expert and an ex-member of the Australian Special Forces. He rescued women and children during the genocide in Rwanda by taking them across the border into neighboring Uganda. Here, he fell in love with the mystic charm of the Ruwenzori mountains and settled down. John is totally against poaching. One day he came with the rangers and tried to convince us that it's bad to hunt animals. He was also afraid that the rangers would shoot one of us. When we laid down our weapons, he became a good friend. Now he supports us. He brings tourists here, and we hope that together we will succeed. John has come up with a Matauvu and the other hunters. He wants them to accompany tourists into the mountains and to make a living without poaching. He promised to find them a substitute for the meat they used to hunt in the mountains. Good morning. Good morning, how are you? I want to take some rabbit. Bawata. This is the way to Bawata. I'm looking for Matauvu. Matauvu the hunter? Matauvu and the other hunters. Matauvu is in the village with his wife. Okay, thank you. John is a Muzungu, a white person. The fact that he can speak some Bakonzo, the local language, has earned him respect. Most white people who came here before him shouted instructions or knew everything better. John was the first to listen to the Bakonzo. He wanted more from them. He wanted to understand the mountains and the rules. He knows that you can't just ban hunting without providing alternatives. So he came up with the idea of the rabbits. In the mountains, Matauvu and his hunters poached a kind of guinea pig. John promised to find them an animal they can breed and then redistribute among themselves until there is enough meat all over Zori so they can stop poaching.
I'm happy to see you. Matauvu, these are the rabbits we're bringing for you and your former poachers. So you've got a meat source which is similar to what you used to get when you were poaching, and as an income generation for all the families around, because I believe you had 70 poachers, so this is the start, a rabbit project for your group.
Half a kilometer above Matauvu's village are his old hunting grounds. The Ruwenzori National Park was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994. It's one of the last primeval forests in Africa. Few tourists venture into this remote area in western Uganda on the border with Congo. Marco Machi has worked in Africa for many years and is now making his childhood dream come true.
La prima volta che ho sentito parlare del Ruwenzori, penso sia stato più
30 years ago, I heard of the Ruwenzori for the first time.
una famiglia decisamente di alpinisti,
I come from a family of mountaineers with a long tradition of climbing.
sempre in montagna.
Since I can remember, we were always in the mountains. What I find particularly fascinating here is to hike on the trails of a fellow countryman, an Italian who explored these mountains in Africa for the first time. I'm fascinated by Africa. It's very exciting to explore one of the highest mountain ranges and to follow the tracks of a compatriot. Prince Luigi Amadeo, Duke of the Abruzzi, was to scientifically explore the Ruwenzori Mountains. In 1906, he spent 3 months in the hills. Prince Luigi was accompanied by his Bakonzo porters and his photographer, Vittorio Sella. They took stunning panoramic photographs and drew detailed maps that are still valid today. An important result of this expedition was a topographic map drawn by the Duke of the Abruzzi himself. Even though the map is more than 100 years old, it was used to define borders that are still valid today between Uganda and the Belgian Congo.
Protettorato inglese che era allora l'Uganda e l'ex Congo belga.
So the 5,109-meter-high Margherita Peak was named after the Italian queen, served as a colonial landmark. The Ruwenzori Massif today. The glaciers have shrunk dramatically, and the range is shrouded in clouds for most of the year. The view into the Congo. From here, the rebels came. They brought death and destruction. Until today, the Ruwenzori are a military exclusion zone. There are deadly mines hidden in the jungle. Every day, soldiers and rangers patrol the area. Makvano Josiah is one of them.
From 1996 to 2001, around July, this park was actually inherited by rebels from the Congo known as ADF. These people were horrible because you find they would kill innocent civilians. Sometimes they would actually abduct some for manpower, and they would loot civilians' properties like goats and foods to the mountains for their survival.
The Bakonzo were divided. Some joined the rebels, fought on the side of the government.
Matauvu was one of the vigilantes that the fighting groups against the rebels used, because he knew the trails, and it was the trails for hunters that mainly these rebels used. So he would actually guide the fighting forces, the government, to chase these rebels out of the mountains.
A dangerous mission, because often the rebels shot at Matauvu and his people. In our hunting group, there was a young boy who was about the same age as my son Moses. When we came out of the mountains, he suddenly disappeared. I went back and looked for him everywhere. When we found him, he was already dead. They had killed him.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
One day, the rebels came to my house. They tied me up with ropes. Then they cut my throat with their machetes. I almost bled to death. Thank God I was saved. In the end, we were able to expel the rebels. And now finally, we have peace. Matauvu has high hopes that mountain climbers and adventurers will soon travel on the paths which he used to go hunting, and where he fought against the rebels, the paths on which many of his comrades lost their lives. Kalalama Camp at 3,100 meters. Matauvu's friend and employer, the Australian John Hunwick, is the first private investor who is trying to create an infrastructure for tourists with the help of the Bakonzo. A laborious process. Each wood and each tool must be carried by hand up the mountains. Sometimes this takes days. Matauvu was there from the beginning.
Altogether, the trail up and back is 62 kilometres. And before we came here, there was absolutely nothing. You can see the bush as it is, extremely thick. In fact, when we explored the trails, you could not walk on ground. You just clambered over the top of the dense vegetation, and sometimes you'd be climbing over the top and you'd think, hey, there's a river underneath us. Because it was so thick, you wouldn't even see the water that was flowing underneath or anything like that. And it's a real accomplishment to develop lads, they're local Bakonzos, but for them to help us, and Matauvu, particularly with his knowledge of the mountains, has been able to help us find a good location to put the trails, then clearing all the trails, and now we're starting to put up the huts.
Now the first guests arrive. Marco is on the way to Camp Kalalama to continue from there with Matauvu and the other porters. The newly created path leads Marco through the rainforest. Because the mountains appeared over 10 million years ago, plants and animals evolved into distinct forms. Scientists believe that here lies the cradle of modern man.
Over there is an old chimp nest, and chimps occupy a nest once and then move away.
Once only?
Yeah, once only. Except if it is an old chimp, it can use it twice or thrice. For one, security purposes, in fear of somebody knowing where it stays and coming to kill it in some time. And then two, they poo-poo in the nest. So in the morning when the nest is smelling, so they don't stay in that same nest. So.
The chimpanzees are hiding today, but the intruders are closely watched. The woods have many eyes, say the Bakonzo. "100% humidity, the perfect climate for animals that like it moist, like these giant worms."
It has a kind of electricity. It's too cold. It's too cold
For a long time, the Ruwenzori range remained hidden from European explorers, one of the last blank spots on the map. Sir Henry Morton Stanley was the first white man to discover the mountains in 1876. He named them Ruwenzori, which translates as rainy mountains. Matauvu and the other carriers wait for Marco on the edge of the timber line. The ranger Josiah Magwano accompanies the group as well. There are still rebels on the Congolese side. The long, hard climb begins. 1,000 meters, the air gets thin, the muscles weaken, and altitude sickness is a constant danger, even for trained mountaineers like Matauvu. Marco is rewarded with a surreal sight, a lunar landscape. Before Henry Morton Stanley discovered the Ruwenzori at the end of the 19th century, the mountains were known as the source of the Nile. 1,000 years ago, the Greeks named them the Mountains of the Moon.
E a me questa parola, i Monti della Luna, mi è sempre rimasto.
I am deeply impressed by the name Mountains of the Moon, and I'm overjoyed to have finally been able to come to this place. It really is a lunar landscape. It's a surreal place, simply fantastic.
È veramente un posto surreale, fantastico.
Marco Macci also got maps. He has made an amazing discovery.
Con mia grande sorpresa ho trovato una mappa.
Much to my surprise, I found a really antique map of Africa that already shows the Mountains of the Moon. But the really amazing thing is that from the 8th century onwards, these mountains simply disappeared from the maps. The reason is that from then on, there was a rule that you could only show what was scientifically documented. But during antiquity, maps were more like illustrations of the reports by commercial travelers or slave traders.
Mentre le mappe antiche riportavano quello che i viaggiatori o i commercianti di schiavi riportavano una volta rientrati nei paesi d'origine.
The Bakonzo don't have maps, but they have an unerring instinct for game. The animal is so sharp that even the ranger and Matauvu hold their breath. What goes on in the mind of the master hunter?
In English, we call it a black-fronted Ruwenzori daika. It is a special species, actually. Yeah, I can see it.
Above the tree line, at 4,000 meters altitude, hikers wade through mud. This is the home of giant groundsels, huge, spectacular St. John's wort plants, senecio, and 6-meter-high heather bushes. The giant lobelia gardens attract the hikers, and the blue monkeys, who use them as a food source. Matauvu keeps a respectful distance. This is Kitazamba's place, whisper the Bakonzo. Kitazamba, the god who never ascends, because he has already mastered the highest peaks. Creator and genius, thunder and deadly frost. They would never speak his name out loud around here, but they hope for his help because their livelihood depends on him. In the evening around the campfire, Matauvu and the other porters dry their wet clothes, while Ranger Josiah Makwano tells Marco about the gods.
See, this is the home of our small gods that we believe in. The spirits in the mountains. To the local people around the mountains, they all good. Except when you abuse them and they are annoyed, this is when you can have a misfortune. For example, they say when you are in the mountains, you are not supposed to mention any name or any god. So if you mention the any name of any of them, you will be unfortunate. It can either rain too much on you and eventually suffocate, or you find that the group actually suffers, and you find that actually some people may die because of this. Either a client, a guide, or even a potter.
The next morning in Matauvu's village. Matauvu's wife Flora is making tea in the small kitchen. She's Matauvu's second wife, his chief wife. Her cousin helps her cook breakfast. Today they make chapati, a kind of flatbread. Sometimes it's hard to wait, because people always die in the mountains. I'm also worried that Matauvu comes back sick, but I pray to God that he returns healthy and that he can help on the farm. Fetching water is women's work. At least there's plenty of it. Even the youngest have to help. Several times a day they get water from the spring. The women and the girls carry up to 20 liters along the steep slopes. The Bakonzo have adapted over centuries to life in the mountains. And despite the hard work, for them, their mountains are a paradise. At over 1,600 meters, there is no malaria, it's never too hot, and they can harvest all year round. There is still plenty of firewood, although more and more trees disappear. People turn them into charcoal they can sell in the city. Matoke, the plantain, is Uganda's national dish. Matauvu's farm produces enough food to feed the entire family. Higher up, in the neighboring village, lives Speciosa, Matauvu's third wife. She also misses her husband, but she has learned to be patient. We are 3 women sharing one man, and if he's not with me, then he's with one of the other 2. But I've got no problem with that. I just have to be patient and wait until it's my turn. In her arms is the youngest son of Matauvu. Moses has come to visit his little brother. In Africa, children are welcome, no matter whether they are siblings or the neighbor's kids. Today's menu is matoke mash and cassava, like almost every day. In the fertile Ruwenzori, no one goes hungry, until now. Because soon it could get crowded in the mountains. Every year, the population by nearly 7%. Those who have to leave home end up here, in the former mining village of Kilembe. People fleeing the rebels have also settled here to begin a new life. For the past 2,000 years, the Bakonzo have mastered the art of forging. Joseph Muswa operates his family's forge, which has been going for 3 generations. Since Joseph has lost his leg because of a landmine, the 50-year-old has had to rely on the help of his staff and his family. But now he has new business is not as good as it used to be. If more hunters give up hunting, then I have to close down. The hunters are my best customers. They buy spares and knives. The forge is all I have for a living. Joseph Muswa also hopes that visitors like Marco will buy his metal goods, but he doesn't really believe it. Those who know how to play instruments, and especially the drums, are highly regarded by the Bakonzo, like Selivano Baluku, the drum maker. We use the drum to inform people about what's happening in the community. The drum is really our telephone. If you're somewhere in the mountains and you have a problem, you only need a drum. And then you can tell the others exactly what's going on. You need the right kind of wood to make a decent drum, and this can only be found in the forests of the Ruwenzori. Selivano Baluku is on his way to find the right material for a new drum. The hollowed trunk for the drum is made from the tree of wisdom, the Omwamba, chosen and consecrated for this special purpose. Stephen and Nicholas, the loggers, have just the right kind of wood for Selivano. Now they're haggling over the price. It's several weeks to make a proper drum. The wood must be cured and a goat must be sacrificed for the skin. Selivano has learned his craft from his grandfather. He says that he wants to continue the art of making Bakonzo drums and pass it on to his children. High up in the mountains, Marco's group is fighting the elements. Marco realizes that the Ruwenzori are not like the Alps. There is mud everywhere, even at 4,000 meters and at 6 degrees centigrade. This calls not so much for mountaineering skills, but for a lot of stamina and a little bikism.
Il primo giorno nel fango, 6 ore nel fango.
On the first day, mud for 6 hours. On the second day, mud for 7 hours. And now, more mud. I can't go on, I'm tired. There's mud everywhere. Too much mud.
C'è fango ovunque. Sono stanco.
Okay, let's go.
Andiamo, let's go.
There are 2 more days of climbing ahead on Marco's 6-day march to Margarita Peak. 5 of them lead through dense bush and swamp. And then the rain, the never-ending rain. Though the wet season has not even started yet. Marco and the porters seek shelter under a rock. Matauvu is also at the end of his tether.
The
Ruwenzori are not easy to negotiate. You're wrong if you think our mountains are easy to master. If you don't respect them, you will get into serious trouble. Recently, one of Matauvu's colleagues died not far from here.
Siamo al campo 3 a 4.000 metri. 4.100.
We are now at Camp D at 4,000 meters, 4,100. I've caught a fever. At night, it was still snowing. We hiked for 3 days through mud, and I froze terribly.
Per 3 giorni nel fango fino alle ginocchia.
I feel really bad. I don't want to give up, but I think I have to. I need to go back. That's for sure.
E adesso non sto bene per niente. Mi spiace rimandare il mio progetto, ma tornerò, questo è sicuro. Tornerò.
The next morning, the road is covered in snow and the mountains are covered in dense fog. Marco turns around, as he said he would. On the way down, the rivers have swollen because of the continuing rain. John meets them to make sure the paths are safe.
When we come up here, the pressure through here was too much, and it actually burst a whole new river behind that big rock. And there's now 2 rivers. And we're somehow defeated how to cross it. But this gives you an indication of what's happened to the weather. This one single little river here has been here ever since creation. Then through the floods this year, it's tore the whole lot out the back. And I really don't know what to make of the weather. It's abnormal to the extreme. You see snow in the streets of London, but this is what's happening here.
The bridge, built by John with Matauvu's help, is gone. Marco needs the help of his porters to make sure to get to the other side. Tourists are lost here without help. Below them, the river of the Mountains of the Moon finds its way across Lake Albert and on to the Nile, just like in the ancient legends. Matauvu's village is bustling with life. To celebrate his return, Moses is allowed to kill a chicken. Everybody has come to celebrate, even the former hunters from the neighboring villages. And then Matauvu finally comes and brings the rabbits, which he still has to distribute. Keep the rabbits and breed them. If we sell them, we can pay the school fees for the children. And if we have lots of rabbits, then we can give the meat to our children, so they can stay healthy and grow well. Even Moses has chosen his favorite rabbit and wants to breed more in the future. If it wasn't for the national park, I would teach Moses how to hunt. He's strong and has the makings of a good hunter. But there's the park now, and we won't be allowed to ever hunt again. We can't do anything against that. Happy, but also a little wistful, the former hunters distribute the rabbits. Tourism and breeding rabbits are their only perspectives for the time being. Matauvu believes his son and the Bakonzo have a future only if they say goodbye to the old ways. What the future holds for their children and how long they can continue to live in these mountains is something that only the rain gods know.